You know how we're taught the Nazis were pure evil. Fanatics who came out of nowhere, built a war machine from nothing and tried to conquer the world. Yeah, your history textbooks make it sound like Germany just bootstrapped itself into tanks, planes, and submarines through sheer hatred and determination. But what if I told you the real story isn't just in Berlin or Munich? It's on Wall Street, in the boardrooms of Manhattan, in the executive suites of Detroit and Pittsburgh. A dozen American banks and corporations didn't just do business with Hitler. They built him, they funded him, they armed him, and they kept the checks flowing even after American boys started dying on European battlefields. In the kicker, some of them got richer during the war than before it. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why your history teachers skipped this chapter, why declassified documents from the 1990s revealed the financial network that made the Third Reich possible, and why the same companies that profited from genocide are still running your world today. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented history, congressional investigations, court records, declassified State Department files. Let's dive in. Let's rewind to 1933. Hitler has just seized power through a combination of electoral manipulation, political violence, and the enabling act that gave him dictatorial powers. But here's what they don't tell you in high school history. Germany's economy was absolutely destroyed. And I mean demolished. The Treaty of Versailles had crushed them with 132 billion gold marks and reparations at roughly $442 billion in today's money. The hyperinflation of 1923 had wiped out the middle class's savings. People were literally burning money for heat because it was cheaper than buying firewood. By 1933, unemployment sat at 30%. 6 million Germans were out of work. Industrial production had collapsed to half of what it was in 1928. The Reichsmark was worth less than the paper it was printed on. People were starving in the streets of Berlin, Hamburg, and Munich. Hitler's promising to make Germany great again, to restore German pride, to tear up the Versailles Treaty, to build an empire. Big talk, inspiring talk, but here's the thing nobody tells you. You could build a military with speeches and propaganda posters. You need steel, massive quantities of it. You need oil, you need rubber, you need aluminum for aircraft. You need precision machinery for weapons manufacturing. You need cash, mountains of it, foreign currency to buy raw materials on international markets. And Germany in 1933 had none of those things. Zero oil reserves, no access to rubber plantations, limited iron ore, a currency that wasn't accepted anywhere. The German economy was running on fumes. So where did it all come from? How did a bankrupt nation transform itself into a military superpower in just 6 years? The answer is simple and disturbing. Wall Street wrote the checks. American corporations provided the technology. And they did it knowingly, willingly, and profitably. Picture this. Wall Street in the 1920s. The American economy is booming, the stock market's going up. Banks are flush with cash and looking for places to invest. And they see an opportunity. Germany. Because even though Germany lost World War I, even though they owe billions in reparations, even though their economy is in shambles, American bankers see potential. They see a highly educated workforce. They see advanced industrial capacity. They see a market of 60 million consumers. And most importantly, they see interest rates. Enter the Dawes Plan of 1924, named after Charles Dawes, an American banker who won the Nobel Peace Prize for this scheme. The plan restructured German debt, made it more manageable. And here's the key. It opened the floodgates for American investment. J.P. Morgan and Company led the charge. They floated a $110 million loan to Germany. That's $1.9 billion today. Dillon Read and Company, another major Wall Street firm, arranged another $100 million. Chase National Bank, which later became J.P. Morgan Chase, got in on the action. Between 1924 and 1931, over $475 million flowed from the United States to Germany. Adjust that for inflation and you're looking at over $8 billion in today's dollars. Not charity. Loans at interest, high interest, with strings attached. American bankers literally managed Germany's economy through the Dawes Committee. They had oversight of the Reichsbank. They monitored Germany's budget. They had veto power over certain expenditures. Wall Street had more control over the German economy than the German government did. And when Hitler takes over in 1933, he inherits this entire system, this network of American loans, this dependence on American capital. And you know what American banks did? They didn't pull out. They didn't demand their money back. They doubled down.
Why?
Because Hitler was good for business. He stabilized the currency. He crushed the unions great for corporate profits. He started massive infrastructure projects, the Autobahn system, which required cement, steel, machinery, and American companies supplied all of it, and they made a fortune. Now let me blow your mind with this one. Standard Oil of New Jersey, owned by the Rockefeller family, made a deal with IG Farben. You know IG Farben? The German chemical conglomerate that later manufactured Zyklon beta gas used in the Holocaust's death chambers, joint ventures, technology sharing, patent exchanges, and the big one, synthetic fuel technology. Here's Germany's problem. They have no oil. Literally zero domestic oil production. They're landlocked in Europe. No colonies. No access to Middle Eastern oil fields. No navy capable of securing petroleum shipping routes. So how did the Luftwaffe fly? How did Panzer tanks roll across Poland, France, and into Russia? How did German submarines patrol the Atlantic? Standard Oil gave them the answer: the hydrogenation process. This technology allowed Germany to synthesize fuel from coal, and Germany had plenty of coal. By heating coal under extreme pressure with hydrogen, you could produce gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel. The Burgess process, developed by German chemist Friedrich Burgess, but perfected and scaled with American help. Standard Oil and IG Farben formed a partnership in 1929 called the Standard IG Company. They shared technology, they divided markets, they coordinated research. By 1939, Germany was producing 72 million barrels of synthetic fuel per year. Without that capability, the German military doesn't last 6 months, their tanks run out of gas, their planes are grounded, their entire Blitzkrieg strategy, which relied on rapid mechanized movement, becomes impossible. Standard Oil knew exactly what they were doing. They had representatives in Germany, they received reports, they understood the military applications, and they kept the partnership running even after 1939, even after Germany invaded Poland, even after Britain and France declared war. Let that sink in. The company that became Exxon provided Hitler with the technology to fuel his war machine. They didn't just sell him oil, they taught him how to make it when he couldn't buy it. They made the Holocaust logistically possible. IBM, International Business Machines, the company that dominated computing for decades. They didn't just sell punch card machines to Nazi Germany, they customized them specifically for tracking Jews. Punch card technology was the cutting edge of data processing in the 1930s. Before computers, these machines could sort, count, and cross-reference millions of data points. Perfect for census data, perfect for tracking populations, perfect for identifying who was Jewish and who wasn't. Every concentration camp had IBM machines processing data: Auschwitz, Dachau, Buchenwald, Treblinka, Sobibor, all of them. The machines tracked prisoner numbers, transport schedules, death counts, work assignments, who lives today, who dies today, all processed on IBM Hollerith machines. IBM's German subsidiary Der Deutsche Hollerith Gesellschaft maintained these machines throughout the war. They sent technicians into the camps. They provided software update. They supplied the punch cards themselves. Each card had to be custom designed for Nazi specifications. And at IBM headquarters in New York, Thomas Watson, the company's president, collected royalties. Every punch card sold, every machine leased, every technical service contract, IBM got paid. An American company was profiting from organizing the Holocaust, from making genocide efficient, industrial, systematic, trackable. Author Edwin Black documented this in his book IBM and the Holocaust, published in 2001. He uncovered thousands of documents, contracts between IBM and Nazi agencies, technical specifications for tracking Jewish populations, correspondence discussing special census requirements. IBM didn't pull triggers, they didn't operate gas chambers, but they provided the infrastructure that made mass murder possible on an industrial scale. The Nazis couldn't have identified, rounded up, transported, and exterminated 6 million Jews without data processing technology. And IBM provided that technology knowingly. After the war, no prosecution, no consequences. Thomas Watson received the Merit Cross of the German Eagle from Hitler. In 1937 he returned it in 1940 only after public pressure became unbearable. The company continued operations, became one of the biggest tech companies on earth, still exists today. Henry Ford, American icon, revolutionized manufacturing with the assembly line, created the Model T, made cars affordable for the average American, also a raging anti-Semite who published a newspaper blaming Jews for everything wrong in the world. The Dearborn Independent, Ford's personal newspaper, published 91 consecutive articles attacking Jews. He blamed them for communism, capitalism, banking, war, prostitution, jazz, music, you name it. He literally published the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a fabricated Russian conspiracy text that claimed Jews were plotting world domination. Hitler loved him, kept Ford's portrait on his desk in Munich, called him my inspiration, mentioned him in Mein Kampf, awarded him the Grand Cross of the German Eagle in 1938, the highest honor Nazi Germany gave to foreigners, and Ford's German factories. Ford work in Cologne didn't stop production when war broke out. They ramped up, building trucks for the Wehrmacht, engines for German military vehicles, using forced labor from concentration camps and prisoner of war facilities. By 1941, Ford work was classified as a critical military contractor by the German government. They produced 78,000 trucks for the German military during the war. Think about that. American engineering, American management techniques, American efficiency, all applied to building Nazi military logistics. And here's the absolutely insane part. After the war, Henry Ford's company demanded compensation from the US government for Allied bombing damage to Ford work. He wanted American taxpayers to pay him for damage done to factories that were building trucks for Nazi armies. The audacity is breathtaking. General Motors wasn't any better. Their German subsidiary, Oil IG, made the trucks that carried Wehrmacht soldiers across Europe, made engines for Luftwaffe planes. By 1939, Opel was producing half of all German trucks and one-third of all German armored vehicles. The Blitzkrieg that destroyed Poland in 28 days rolled on General Motors wheels. The invasion of France. GM built Opel Blitz trucks, transported German troops. The siege of Leningrad, GM engines powered the vehicles. GM executives maintained control throughout the war through Swiss intermediaries. And after Pearl Harbor, when America was officially at war with Germany, Opel factories kept producing for the Nazis. GM later claimed they couldn't control foreign subsidiaries. Translation: we were making too much money to care about Allied soldiers dying. After the war, General Motors sued the US government for $33 million in damages to their German plants, wanted compensation for Allied bombs hitting factories that were making Nazi war machines, and they won, got paid. American taxpayers compensated GM for damage to factories building equipment that killed American soldiers. Let's talk about the banks, because this gets even darker. Chase National Bank, which became JP Morgan Chase, operated a branch in Nazi-occupied Paris. After Germany conquered France in 1940, Chase's Paris branch didn't close. They stayed open and helped the Nazis. They froze Jewish accounts. They helped Nazi authorities liquidate assets, stripped wealth from families being rounded up and sent to Drancy internment camp, the last stop before Auschwitz. An American bank was facilitating the theft of Jewish property while American soldiers were preparing to fight in Europe. The Paris branch operated until 1944, 3 years after Pearl Harbor, 3 years after America officially entered the war. Documents that surfaced in the 1990s show that Chase's executives in New York knew exactly what was happening. They received reports, they made decisions, and they kept the branch open because it was profitable. Union Banking Corporation, run by Prescott Bush, yes, future President George H.W. Bush's father, held Nazi assets and financed German steel production through complex corporate structures. The bank was eventually seized under the Trading with the Enemy Act in 1942, but Prescott Bush faced no criminal charges. ITT Corporation sold communication equipment to the German military, had representatives negotiating with Nazi officials throughout the war. After the war, ITT actually sued for and received $27 million in compensation for damage to its German factories, including a plant that manufactured guidance systems for German rockets that bombed London. These weren't rogue operations. These weren't low-level managers making unauthorized decisions. These were board-level strategies. CEOs, new shareholders, annual reports documented the German operations, and the US government mostly looked the other way until public pressure became too loud to ignore. Let's talk numbers, because the scale is absolutely staggering and puts this in perspective. IG Farben alone used over 83,000 slave laborers from Auschwitz, worked them to death manufacturing synthetic rubber and fuel. Average life expectancy for a slave laborer at IG Farben's Buna plant, 3 to 4 months. They were literally worked to death, and IBM's machines tracked every single one of them. Ford work produced 78,000 trucks for the Wehrmacht. Opel produced 29,000. Together, that's 107,000 military vehicles. That's over one-third of Germany's entire military logistics capacity. Without American trucks, the Nazis don't conquer France. Don't reach the gates of Moscow. Don't transport Jews to death camps across occupied Europe. The Holocaust required industrial efficiency. You can't murder 6 million people with rifles and rope. You need railways built with American steel. You need trucks built by Ford and GM. You need poison gas made by IG Farben using American chemical patents. You need data processing to track victims provided by IBM. You need fuel synthesized with Standard Oil technology. American corporations provided the infrastructure for genocide, for profit, knowingly, willingly. Here's the part that should make your blood boil. After the war, none of these American companies were held truly accountable. There were trials. Yes, the Nuremberg industrialist trials prosecuted executives from IG Farben and Krupp. But the American companies, protected, because the US government needed them for post-war reconstruction. The Marshall Plan required industrial capacity. The Cold War required manufacturing capability. So Ford got government contracts, GM got Marshall Plan funding, IBM got defense contracts, and the files got sealed, classified, buried in government archives. It took 50 years for researchers to uncover the full scope. In 1998, class action lawsuits forced disclosure. Holocaust survivors sued. Documents surfaced. Letters, memos, contracts, internal correspondence proving executives knew exactly what they were funding. And the settlements. Insulting. In 2000, German industry created a $5 billion fund for slave laborers. Ford and GM's combined contribution, $20 million. That's pocket change compared to the billions they made. IBM paid nothing, denied knowledge until forced to settle privately in the 2000s, 60 years after the fact. No admission of guilt, no apology. Just make it go away. So what do you do with this information? First, understand that World War II wasn't just about soldiers and battles. It was financed. American banks restructured German debt. American companies built German military vehicles and synthesized German fuel. American technology tracked Holocaust victims. Without Wall Street, Hitler doesn't rebuild Germany's economy. Without Ford and GM, the Wehrmacht doesn't roll. Without IBM, the Holocaust isn't industrialized. They didn't wear swastikas, but they enabled everything, for profit. Second, this isn't ancient history. It's a pattern. American corporations doing business with authoritarian regimes. Apple manufacturing in Xinjiang where Uyghurs face cultural genocide. Tech companies building surveillance tools for dictatorships. It's the same moral calculus. Profit versus principles. And profit wins every time. Third, this isn't conspiracy theory. It's documented fact. Congressional investigations. Declassified State Department files. Court records. It's all public. But it's not taught, not discussed. Because the companies involved still have power. Still lobby. Still control narratives. If this is making you angry, good. Because this story doesn't end in 1945. It repeats. Different countries, different products. Same profit motive, same excuses. And unless people know, unless this gets loud, it'll keep happening. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button. Subscribe for more hidden history. And comment, what modern company do you think is playing this game right now? Because I guarantee you're funding something you'd hate if you knew the full truth. Stay skeptical. History isn't over. It's just better at hiding.